Hi, and welcome to Celebration Bar Review. In this video lecture, I want to talk a little bit about part of the process that I think students go through as they are beginning to move towards taking their exam. And this is true whether you're a repeat taker or a first-time taker. Very often, at some point in your study, you'll begin to ask yourself the question, is my work passing? Whether we're talking about a multi-state exam or essay or performance test, whatever it might be. And it's a natural question to ask, it's a reasonable question to ask, but ultimately it's a rather fruitless question to ask. Up until the point that you're actually taking the exam, whether your work is passing or not doesn't really tell you or anyone else very much. As I'm recording this today, we happen to be about 60 days or so before the upcoming bar exam, but when I look at people's work, even a couple of months out, or a month out, or even 3 weeks before an exam, it's not at all uncommon to see that the work is not yet of passing quality. Now, should that cause you to panic and be concerned? And the answer to me is no. It really shouldn't. The real question to ask is, am I making progress? Am I moving towards something? But the bigger problem for most people is that they have no idea what they're moving towards. So in this video, I want to give you an idea of how you might set a goal for what you want to move towards and then be able to measure it. And I hope that that's helpful to you. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to take some ideas from someone whose work I admire a great deal, and that's Paul Sheely at Learning Strategies, who talks about what he calls the ideal you. The ideal you is something that you visualize, you think about, and for our purposes, I would say that you begin this process by trying to describe the ideal you for the bar exam. So the ideal Jackson at the bar exam would be someone who's knowledgeable about the law, who's confident in his writing skills. The ideal Jackson would be poised and focused and full of energy, would be locked in on those exam questions and not distracted and not disturbed by anything going on around him, and so on and so forth. The first step, in other words, is for you to describe, and I would suggest you do this in writing, but describe yourself, the ideal you. What does the ideal you look like in the bar exam? Be as specific as you can be. The ideal you is excited about seeing a real property essay question. For me, that would be a stretch, but that's what the ideal me would look like. The ideal you would be well rested, be exercised, have exercised, feel lots of energy, and so on and so forth. You can be as specific as possible. That's good. So identify the ideal you for the bar exam purposes. Now, once you've written down that ideal you, the next step is to talk about the current you. Now, the current you is going to change as you're moving through the process of study. But as you make that list of the ideal you, start looking at that list, and then over on the right-hand side of your paper, if you will, where you've got the ideal you versus the current you, here's the ideal you, here's the current you, and you make your list of things that you think are the ideal you, then start identifying the current you. Am I currently knowledgeable about all the areas of law that are on the test? Probably not. Am I filled with energy and enthusiasm? Well, hopefully, but if not, say so. Do I have focus? Do I have confidence? Am I avoiding distractions? Am I able to get essays written in the time frame that's permitted? Can I do multi-state questions in the time that's permitted? Do I understand the techniques that are being tested on different parts of the exam? For each of these kinds of areas, identify where you are currently. Now recognize that as you go through that list, that simply is a snapshot in time of where you are today. And so you're going to want to continue to do the current you on a regular basis, maybe every week, maybe every 10 days. If you're further away from the exam, maybe once a month. Once you've completed the current you list of items and the ideal you, you now have a roadmap. To get from the current you to the ideal you is what you should be doing during your studies. And some of you are probably saying, well, that's really obvious. And yet, if you're saying that, my guess is you aren't doing it. It's moving from the current you over to the ideal you that you should be focused on as the process of getting ready for the exam. So to come back to my original question, how do you know where you are? Well, you look to see how many of those qualities of the ideal you the current you possesses. If you've got most of them in place, you're in great shape. If you're missing a lot of those qualities, then you know you've got a lot of work ahead of you. And that's a better question, I think, to ask and a better evaluation to make than saying, am I passing or not? Because truthfully, it's very difficult to know if you're passing or not passing. I think a qualified teacher or mentor can give you some guidance there. But by and large, it's very difficult to self-assess that. But what you can self-assess very effectively is the difference, the gap between the ideal you and the current you. Now, that gap is where you want to put your energy and your focus. If you find in looking at those two lists that there's a huge gap in your knowledge of the law in certain subjects, then that's what you want to work on. If there's a gap in your confidence level, if there's a gap in your ability to stay calm and focused, if there's a gap between the ideal you in terms of nutrition and exercise for the exam and where you are today, then you know that's something you've got to work on. Now, just having identified it obviously doesn't mean you're going to do anything about it. But I think what it does is it takes that parade of horribles, if you will, and it reduces to something that is manageable and can be articulated and can be categorized. And in doing those things, now you have something that you can work with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So what I suggest to my students is that they create this ideal you and current you, measure the difference between the two. That gap is where you put your attention. One way to do that is by using something called a vision board. And before some of you scoff and say, well, that's a little too new age for me, it's an amazingly effective tool that enables the brain to fixate and connect on something beyond just words or sounds or letters. A vision board is nothing other than a piece of poster board that you would get at any store for a child's presentation in school, for example. And then on that board, you put words and pictures, things that you've printed out or found on the internet or in a magazine. Yes, magazine, the thing you still, turn the pages, that identify that ideal you. Now you'd say, well, wait, I just made the list. Why do I need the vision board? Well, I found that when people can visualize what the ideal you looks like, it's really helpful. So sometimes, it's hard to visualize confidence necessarily. I could look for a picture of a confident person. Maybe there's a picture of me at a moment of great success prior in my life. When I won the national debate championship and I'm holding the trophy, I'm pretty confident at that moment. That's a great picture to put on my vision board. It reminds me of that moment. I had a student that was a baseball player and had great success as a baseball player, and in order to remind him of those ideal moments for himself, I had him swing his baseball bat, just to get in the feeling of this is what I do when I'm successful at something. And in that vision board, you can identify that. Now, maybe it's just with the words, maybe it's with some pictures, but the idea is that you take the board and you set it behind your computer, over your computer, next to your study area, whatever it might be. Maybe you take a screenshot and put it on your iPad and carry it with you. The idea is that you're able to look at that and have a visual focus as well as the list focus that gives you that idea of what you're aiming for. If you don't have a goal, it's really difficult to know where you're going or how you're going to get there. And you've heard that before lots and lots of times, but I'm surprised at how many people start their bar study or get into it with no real goal other than, I want to pass. Well, I don't know many people that start this process and say, I don't want to pass. I take that as a given, but it's not very well defined. In order to pass, you have to have some other qualities, I think, along the way. And so the list of the ideal you, the vision board, those things help identify where you and what you need to do in order to be ready to pass the bar. And so I would say take some time and do that. When you're sick of reading an outline or listening to a lecture or doing practice questions, take an hour or two and create a vision board for yourself. It's kind of a fun thing to do, even if you're not artistic. And it gives you some ability to start dreaming and looking and thinking ahead to what you want that ideal you to be like on the exam. And then that's what you're aiming for. That's what you're working towards. And so every day as you study, every week as you study, you know that you're narrowing the gap between the ideal and the current. You're moving towards that ideal, and in moving towards the ideal, you're giving yourself the ability to be closer to your ultimate goal, which is to pass the bar, and then whatever comes after that. I hope that's helpful to you. If you want to know more about vision boards, there's a great book that we make available in our STAR package by John Asaraf, and it's called The Vision Board Kit. It's also referenced a lot in The Secret and in other books that talk about the law of attraction. And the law of attraction, in my experience, actually works. What you focus on, what you think about, is in fact what you move towards. So if you're thinking about the ideal you, you're going to move towards it. And I encourage you to do that in whatever form or fashion helps you, whether it's tangible items from your past successes or current successes. Maybe it's your diploma from law school that's in front of you so you can see that you were able to get through that. Whatever helps move you towards that ideal is what you want to be doing. I had a conversation with a student the other day who said that what they had done was to take a letter from the bar examiners indicating a pass, and they'd gotten it, I guess, from a friend or something else, and they whited that out and put their name in there as a great way of saying the ideal me will get this letter, will be on the pass list. And I think that's a terrific idea. So I encourage you to keep moving towards that ideal you. And in doing that, I think you're going to see much greater progress and success as you study. Thanks very much. We'll be back again shortly with more messages and thoughts as you prepare for the bar exam.